first word in both of them is the word prehistoric. It's an evolutionary term. It really means a time before man. Some of you may not have caught that because, again, we've been kind of evolutionized. If you go by this book, the time before man was pretty short, okay? About 6 days, give or take. What I want to do, I want to start out by giving you some Bible verses that I hope you'll write down. Those of you who write in your Bible, maybe find a blank page. Those of you who are more tech savvy, put these in your phone. Bible verses that help lay a foundation for things like how old the earth is, a biblical worldview. Ultimately, Bible verses that will help you to answer questions to friends, neighbors, co-workers. The first one is Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I have told literally thousands of people, if you can't trust the first verse of the Bible, why would you trust anything to follow? And you look at me and you say, yeah, that's good and all, but exactly when was the beginning? It's not like Genesis 1 has a date beside it, right? Let's keep reading. Colossians chapter 1, verse 16, Paul said, for by him were all things created that are in heaven, that are in the earth. So Paul here letting us know it is a creation event. God made everything in heaven and on earth. Verse number 3, Matthew chapter 19, verse 4. He answered, he said to them, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? Now, in your Bible, those words are probably going to be in red, which means who's doing the talking? Jesus. Notice he says, we were made at the beginning. In fact, look at how he phrases it in Mark chapter 10, verse 6, when he says, but from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. So, here we are talking about the fact that we've been here from the beginning. God made us male and female. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we knew who that first male was, which Paul takes care of for us? 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 45, he said, so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul. The last Adam was made a quickening spirit. Obviously, first man, Adam, he's talking about Adam of Adam and Eve. Who's the last Adam? Jesus. Why would he call Jesus the last Adam? Well, think about this. Adam of Adam and Eve, he was denied access to the tree of life. He had to go work out in the thorns. Along comes Jesus, who gives us access to eternal life. And what did they put on his head? Crown of thorns. The last verse, the sixth verse that I would give you, Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living, letting us know all the lineage of humanity is coming through who? Eve. Now, with those 6 Bible verses in hand, here's what you can do. You can open up your Bible to your favorite chapter, which I know for all of you guys, Genesis chapter 5, right? So-and-so begat so-and-so begat so. Also know some of y'all probably skip that. You read the first name and you skip on down. When I teach this, I always use a timeline because it is very, very visual. Take a look at the information that we're actually given. Text says, Adam lived 130 years, he begot a son, he called his name Seth. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop 130 right up here on my timeline because that's how old Adam was when Seth entered the picture, right? And we keep reading. Seth lived 105 years, he begot Enosh. So now we add 105 to that first number, and we're up to what? 235. And we keep reading. Enosh lived 90 years. He begat Canaan. So we add 90 to that. We're now up to 325. And suddenly what you realize is you can start to figure out quite literally the age of the earth just using the Bible. You say, wait, time out. How do you figure that? Well, because in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It was a creation event. There were males and females here from the beginning. First male's name? I'm just giving you his lineage, right? To which some folks would say, well, maybe there's like gaps or holes in the genealogies. If you have a Bible with you, open it up to the New Testament book of Jude. I always like telling people, turn to Jude chapter 3 and just kind of watch you. Take a look with me at verse 14. It says, now Enoch, the seventh of Adam, prophesied about these men also, saying, behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his saints. So you've got an inspired New Testament writer talking about Enoch being the seventh. So we turn back to Genesis 5, or we look up here on this timeline, we start counting down. Lo and behold, there's Enoch, and guess what? He's 7. Which tells me if you're going to put like gaps or holes in the genealogies, it's going to have to come after him. And I promise you, there's not enough gaps or holes in the world to fit evolutionary time into this thing. In fact, let me share something with you that some of you have never thought about. The vertical arrow that I just dropped on the screen behind me, you realize everybody to the left of that could have had a face-to-face conversation with Adam? Because they were all living as contemporaries at the same time. That means Noah's dad, Lamech, could have looked Adam in the face and said, hey, what was it like before you got kicked out? But the one that's even more impressive to me, take a look. I'm going to slide Noah to the top of the screen. We'll keep the timeline going. Do you realize everybody to the left of that arrow could have had a face-to-face conversation with Noah's son Shem about what it was like in the pre-flood world? You're now talking about Abraham and Isaac. Could have talked directly to Shem, who could have talked directly to his grandfather Lamech, who could have talked directly to Adam. I had him make this particular slide for me because I wanted you to be able to see all the way from Adam to Abraham. Now I realize the font's too small and you guys are sitting in the back and you're kind of squinting. But let me kind of orient you for just a minute. Adam's right up here. First blue line, everybody alive during his lifetime. Second blue line would be the flood. Red line is the birth of Abraham. If you look across the top, there's numbers. Those numbers are derived from the Bible. So in round numbers, from Adam to Abraham, about 2,000 years. All right, let's jump over here to Jesus for just a minute. Do we have any idea how long it's been from Jesus to us today? I should see people doing this because we're living in the year 2024, AD. Anybody know what AD really stands for? It's Latin for in the year of our Lord, which atheists don't like, so they've actually changed it. Our kids are now learning CE, Common Era, BCE, before Common. I don't care if you call it ABCDFG. It still hinges around Jesus Christ and his life, right? So if you have a bad day this week, here's what I want you to think about. When an atheist writes a check, he has to use a calendar dating system that goes when Jesus was on the earth, okay? Follow me for just a minute. Adam to Abraham's about 2,000 years. Jesus to us today, about 2,000 years. If I can bridge the middle, then you would basically have the history of the world. Now, if I could get you from Abraham to Christ, then you would have it all. Wouldn't it be cool if a timeline just kind of kept right on going all the way to Jesus? And it does. In fact, the Bible doesn't give you just one. It actually gives you both Mary and Joseph's, right? Here's what's happening. The textbooks don't say, hey, there was no guy named Jesus, because I think we would get a little bit upset. But they will say things like, the earth is billions of years old and existed long before man ever walked the earth. Ultimately, what they're doing is they are tearing away the foundation on which Jesus Christ and his cross rest. Because if there was no garden, if there was no Adam, why do we need a Redeemer? The way they do it is through these guys right here. And they start very young. If you think about it for just a moment, how many young people do you know of that don't have a fascination with dinosaurs? Kids love them. They learn their names. In fact, I tell parents, if you haven't stepped on a plastic dinosaur figurine in the middle of the night, you're not qualified yet. Because the pain is only second to one other thing. Legos. Exactly. See, we got some parents. Kids love them. But it's not just kids that love them. We adults also love them. For instance, magazines. They love to put their picture on the cover. Go back to right there. They love to put their picture on the cover because they know when they do that, they're almost guaranteed to increase sales. And so they tell us where they've been found, how big they think they were, what they think they ate. Like, for instance, the largest dinosaur, one of the largest that they have discovered, is a creature called the Argentinosaurus. Guess where they found it? Texas? No, I'm just kidding. They'd like to think so. If you want to see a picture or a replica of this guy, you have to go to the Atlanta Fernbank Museum. It's the only replica in the world. He stretches literally from one end of the museum to the other. To give you an idea how big this guy really is, if you look at the screen for just a minute, that's a full-size T-Rex right here that doesn't come up to that guy's hip bone. And yet, again, it's because of these same dinosaurs that we're losing a lot of our kids. And let me explain to you what I think is happening. We'll start with a young person here, age about 3. They start buying the figurines, buy the games, all the toys. In fact, some of you grandparents are guilty for buying the stuff. They hit about age 4, age 5. It is a February cold morning in Tennessee. Mom is over there. She's stirring up some instant oatmeal. Kid is reading the package, learning about evolution. They get a little older. Now they're 5. All they want is snacks. So what do we give them? We give them snacks. And they learn about evolution. They get a little older. They want to start going to a fine dining establishment. So we take them somewhere like Wendy's, because that's all we can afford. And as we're going through the drive-thru, they're eating their chicken nuggets in the back of the car. Guess what they're reading about? They're reading about evolution. Or maybe your kid doesn't like Wendy's. Maybe they like McDonald's or Arby's. But the point being, they're still learning all about evolution. They get a little older. They start taking field trips to what used to be the Cumberland Science Museum. Now it's the Adventure Science Museum. Or maybe they go somewhere like the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. Or maybe they go to that Fernbank Museum. Or to the Field Museum in Chicago where Sue is on display. Take a look at that picture for just a moment. And look at the kids gathered around that placard. I took that picture. And I also took a picture of what they're reading. And there's no way of harmonizing what they're reading with this right here. They get a little older. Now they are age 8, 9, 10. They're starting to read chapter books. Like Magic School Bus. How many of you in here are familiar with the Magic School Bus? Okay, some of the older people in here saying yes because they don't want to seem old. Very, very popular kids series. Notice this one. It's got a picture of a little boy holding a picture of a dinosaur chasing a caveman. But notice what the text says. This story is make-believe. It says there were no dinosaurs in the time of cave people. Or maybe your child liked The Magic Treehouse, another very popular kids series. Interesting, this one, you don't even get into the meat of the book yet. You're still in the introduction. It talks about dinosaurs living millions of years ago. And then it talks about humans have not yet, what? Evolved. In fact, in that particular book, they've got a timeline. It talks about the Triassic, the Jurassic, and then finally humans coming in over here on the end. Now, I want you to look at that picture, and I want you to try to harmonize that with the words of Jesus Christ in Mark chapter 10, verse 6, who said, "But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female." Just to make sure everybody understands what the problem is. Most textbooks, a lot of the media right now, they are saying the dinosaurs died out roughly 65 million years ago, and we came along carrying our clubs supposedly 3 million years ago. Is that what this book teaches? Now, this book actually teaches that there was a 6-day creation, right? And if I asked you, what day were all land-dwelling creatures created on? The answer? Day 6. Okay? What day was man created on? The answer? Day 6. Which means, if this book is true, and it is, we would have to coexist. Now, I realize for some of you listening to that, you're thinking, that's crazy. There's no way. Yeah, I'm going to show you evidence, okay? Because that's what I do for a living. I'm an evidence guy. But I need you to understand, if this book is true, there's no other way around it. Take a look. Romans chapter 5, verse 12 says, "Therefore, just as through one man sin entered the world, death through sin, thus death spread to all men because all sinned." If I were to ask you what brought death into the picture, according to Paul, it was what? Sin. So, before Adam and Eve sinned, how much death was there? You realize if evolution is true, how much death you would have to have in order for things to evolve and die and evolve and die and evolve, and then finally, Garden of Eden would basically be built on a graveyard of fossils, right? 2 quick questions we need to answer. Number 1, did they really exist? The answer is absolutely. There's far too much evidence out there showing that, yeah, these guys are real. And it doesn't do our children any good to say, no, they were make-believe, and then they come face to face with some 2-story tall T-Rex skeleton. Or like one Christian mom who was well-meaning, but she told her child, she said, no, I think God maybe just dug some places and put bones in there for us to find later on. I don't think God is the author of confusion. Okay? I think they were real. Question is not, were they real? The question is, when did they walk the earth? Was it millions of years ago, or could it have been more recent in times? Now, before I show you evidence, I need to give you a 1-minute history lesson. It's going to make sense a little bit later on, and that is the word dinosaur itself was actually coined by a guy named Sir Richard Owen. He used 2 Greek words, Dinosaurs, translated fearfully great lizard. Now, he made up that word in 1845. 1845 is roughly when the word dinosaur was invented. And ever since that point, we have been fascinated with them. And so again, the question is not, did they exist? The real question is, when? Let's real quickly look at some evidence together. We'll start in April 29, 2013, where researchers found skin from a hadrosaur. I need to make sure you understand what I did not say. I did not say fossil. I said skin, as in soft tissue. Now, why is that a big deal? Soft tissue doesn't stick around that long. Think about soft tissue sticking around for 65 million Montana winters. Or, how about this one? January 2005, where researchers very quietly announced they had discovered a dinosaur that was in a fossilized mammal stomach. Again, why is that a big deal? That's a big deal because supposedly mammals evolved from dinosaurs. Dinosaurs cold-blooded. And the story we like to tell is, well, there were these cold-blooded things, and then they decided to evolve into warm-blooded things, and then we got cows and we got humans. Well, we got a mammal that was eating one. Or maybe somebody could explain to me this Mesopotamian cylinder seal that was discovered over in that part of the world by archaeologists. It looks an awful lot like what you and I would call an apatosaurus. And while we're down there digging, if we go over to Egypt, to where the pyramids are, 2 tablets have been discovered. Both of them have dinosaur-like creatures on them. The next one's probably my favorite. There is a Buddhist temple over in Cambodia, about 800 years old. It had been completely covered over with vegetation. They came in with what you and I would call industrial strength Roundup. Killed everything, peeled back the vines. That's when they noticed these elegant carvings on this temple. So like, if you look carefully, this guy right here is a monkey. You see his face, his front legs, back legs, tail kind of going up behind him. This guy right here, some of you got on your wall at home. It's a deer. You can see his antlers, his tail in the up position. The artist didn't just stop with things like monkey and deer. He also carved things like dinosaurs. Dinosaurs so well carved that a 10-year-old child can tell me what kind it is. That's a Stegosaurus. Now, I'm trained as a scientist, love firsthand data. Had a buddy that was going to Cambodia. I said, look, you have got to get me firsthand pictures. And he did. These are some of his. But the best part of his whole story, he took the tour. He said, Brad, while I'm taking this tour of this temple, he said, I'm snapping shots for you. We get up to one of the columns that's got dinosaurs on it. He said, I'm taking pictures. I turned to our tour guide and I say, hey, how do you guys explain this? He said the tour guide's exact words were, I know what you're thinking, but we're supposed to tell you it's a porcupine. I've seen porcupines before. That don't look like one. Or maybe you could explain to me the Ica stones of Peru. A gentleman by the name of Dr. Javier Cabrera was given one of these stones as a birthday present from a native there in Peru, a farmer. He asked the guy, he said, hey, what is this? And the native farmer told him, said, these are burial stones that the ancient Incan Indians used to place inside their tombs. Well, Dr. Cabrera set out to find as many of these burial stones as he could. He and his team started opening up tombs all across the area. All told, he found about 11,000 of them. Roughly a third of which have very elegant pictures of dinosaurs. And in many cases, not just dinosaurs, you got dinosaurs and men. Or maybe somebody could explain this poncho that a buddy of mine, Dennis Swift, discovered. Tomb of an 11-year-old boy whose mom had embroidered dinosaurs on it. Or maybe you could explain to me the petroglyphs in Natural Bridges National Monument. If you go there today, just outside of Blanding, Utah, there are 3 of these natural sandstone bridges, one of which is called Kachina. And it's on that sandstone bridge that the Anasazi Indians, they carved all kinds of things. And you can go there today, you can see things like bighorn sheep, and you can see dinosaurs. Again, how did they know what to carve if they'd never seen these creatures? And let me remind you again, the word dinosaur didn't even come into existence until 1845. Or maybe you could explain to me this textile that's in the Museum of Peru, again, identified as a dinosaur. Or maybe you could explain the tomb of Richard Bell. If you ever get over to England, let me encourage you, go to the north section of the UK. There's a place called the Lake District, a little town called Carlisle. Sitting right in the middle of that particular little town is this cathedral that's older than the United States of America. The reason I know that, there are people buried in the floor. So buried below the rug right there on the screen is a guy by the name of Richard Bell. He died in 1496. He's not the oldest guy buried. Now, when did I say the word dinosaur was actually coined? 1845. So in round numbers, this guy died 350 years before the word even came into existence. If you go there today and have them roll up that protective carpet, or if you've got 4 small kids that don't know any better and they'll do it for you, you get down on your hands and your knees, you'll start noticing different animals like fish and dogs and dinosaurs. 350 years before the word even came into existence. Maybe you can explain this Mayan vase. Again, all of these things are discoveries, they're artwork, they're carvings. Dr. Samuel Hubbard, he found a carving that looks amazingly like a dinosaur we call the Edmontosaurus. Take a look at what he said. Taken all in all, the proportions are good. A huge reptile is depicted in the attitude in which man would most likely see it, reared on its hind legs, balancing with the long tail, either feeding or in a fighting position, possibly defending itself against a party of men. Now, I brought a picture of what he actually found, and I hate to be the one to tell you, but that right there is not a sheep or a cow, but it's an awfully good representation of a dinosaur we now know existed called the Edmontosaurus. Or what about soft tissue? You know, lately they've been finding soft tissue in dinosaur fossils. The one that kind of started everything was a lady by the name of Mary Schweitzer. She was in the Hell Creek Formation. She was digging. She had a femur from a T-Rex. And I talked to her. She said, Brad, it was really by mistake that we made this discovery. She said we encased it in a protective material, wanted to fly it back to the lab, so they rented a helicopter. So the helicopter landed. That's when we realized we made a mistake, because that block was too big to physically fit in the helicopter. She said we had to make a choice really quick. In fact, she said something to the effect of, if you think renting a cab in New York City is expensive, try renting a helicopter in Montana. She said we cut it right down the middle. When we did so, we could look inside where we found soft tissue, blood vessels, and what she thinks are blood cells. Again, hopefully I don't have to tell you, soft tissue, blood vessels, blood cells, they don't stick around for 65 million years. So I asked her the one question that I thought was kind of obvious. I said, why do you think we've never found soft tissue in dinosaur fossils before? Her answer sent a chill right up my spine. She said, maybe because we've never thought to look. Now think about that for just a minute. If you found a dinosaur bone, and I come running up to you with a hammer and saying, let's bust that open. That bone was the prize, right? We've now discovered that there may be even a bigger prize inside, because since she's made this discovery, 16 additional dinosaur fossils have shown soft tissue in them. Is that a big deal? Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. A couple of years ago, I took my middle son on a dinosaur dig to the Hell Creek Formation. If you ever want to find dinosaur stuff, that is the place to go. Okay, it's absolutely just feet, footprints, fossils, scales, teeth all over the place. We found some dinosaur bones while we were out there. We also discovered that we were very close to where a guy found a Triceratops horn that had soft tissue in it. So I asked the lady, her name was Marge, I said, hey, can we go over there? And she's like, yeah. Now, I would play you some video of Marge. She's the lady that's her ranch. She owns thousands of acres. But her language is kind of a mixture between a sailor and a Cajun. Okay, he's a little spicy. we go over there, we find all these kind of cool things, and sure enough, we could see precisely where this Triceratops horn had been lifted. She tells me, she says, "Oh, I know Mark. I got his phone number if you want to call him." Now, I knew who she was talking about because I'd been following this case in the news. This guy worked in a California laboratory for 20 years. On his personal vacation time, he would go out hunting fossils. He found soft tissue in a Triceratops horn, published it in a peer-reviewed journal, didn't mention God, never mentioned creation, simply said, "Hey, here's what we found." The day that it came out online, they fired him. In fact, one of the professors in his department said, "We will not have your religion in our department." I called him up. I said, "Hey, we're doing a documentary showing evidence. Would you mind me interviewing you?" He told me, he said, "I'm presenting some stuff in California." He said, "If you can be there, not only will I let you interview me," he said, "I'll bring some tissue, let you look at it." So we loaded up, we headed out there. This guy has got cells so well preserved, he's got 2 labs that have offered to culture it. Now, that's a pretty big deal. I promise you, if I had unlimited time, and I realize I don't, I could stand up here and just click away, show you slide after slide after slide of all kinds of evidence. I do want you to look at one more, and that is this one on the screen. You'll notice that's a 3-toed dinosaur track. Look what's in the front of it. That's a human footprint. How do you get a human footprint in the same striatal layer as a dinosaur track if we're separated by 65 million years? And this one, by the way, has been verified with a spiral CT scan. It's real. And somebody says, "Okay, then why aren't they mentioned in this book?" To which I would say, that's not a fair question. Because when was the word dinosaur actually coined? 1845. When was the Bible translated into English? Well, let's see. King James Version was 1611. How would you get the word dinosaur into a book in 1611 if that word doesn't come along for another couple hundred years? A better question is there compelling evidence of dinosaur-like creatures in this book? Oh, yeah. I don't have the time to go through all of it, but I'll say this. This week, let me encourage you, check out the book of Isaiah, book of Psalm, where you'll find these creatures mentioned. You'll also find it in the book of Job. Job chapter 38. You remember, God shows up. He's going to let Job know he's in charge. Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and says, "Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you and you will answer me." For the next 3 chapters, he just deluges Job with question after question. And one of those questions is, what about this creature called the behemoth? Which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. Strength is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. Now, some of you in here may have a Bible that's got a little footnote that says that this creature is either an elephant or hippopotamus. To which I would very gently remind you, your footnotes are not inspired. But I'll go along with you. Take a look at the description of this creature. It says, his strength is in his loins, the force is in the navel of his belly. So obviously this is a guy with a big belly, right? That guy have a big belly? Yep. That guy have a big belly? Yep. That guy have a big belly? Yep. Keep reading. Job chapter 40, verse 17. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. Now, when it's talking about cedars here, it's going to be talking about some of the largest of trees. In fact, when I teach preaching students, I always tell them, picture in your mind going to the northwest sector of the country where the redwoods, the sequoias are that you can't get your hand around. You say, "Brad, why would you say that?" Well, I mean, if you do a little word study in the Bible on that word cedar? Remember, it was the cedars of Lebanon that were used to build the temple, not the park. I know what y'all are thinking. That's what they built the temple with. These were massive trees. And yet God is saying He moves His tail like a cedar. Question, does that look like a cedar to anybody in this room? How about that? That's getting a whole lot closer, isn't it? What I want you to remember from this lesson is our kids are fascinated with these things. And unfortunately, evolutionists are using these creatures as kind of a hook, or think of it as candy, to basically train our kids into thinking in evolutionary terms instead of biblical terms. Our kids deserve the truth. And so as you talk to your children, your grandchildren, please, please, please make sure they understand. God created man. God created all the animals. He did it in 6 days. And oh, guess what? There's evidence out there supporting exactly what He did do. Appreciate very, very much y'all's attention today. Next time we're going to have a little longer time. But it has been good to be with you. Look forward to being back with you again. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Terry.
Brad, thank you. Maybe for too long, we'll have to hear a little something like here at some point. Thank you. If you have any questions for him, he's going to be here for a while. He's having lunch with our 20, 30, 40 class over the building, but we've got time. We'll make our way over there when we can.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.